welcome to another episode of A11y Insights. I'm Eugene Woo, the CEO of Venngage. Venngage is the only design tool in the market that exports ADA-compliant PDFs. If you're tired of remediating your PDFs and you want to start creating accessible documents from the start, try Venngage. You can sign up for free. We have a very special guest today. Her name is Tina Gada. Tina is a former developer turned UX or user experience designer. She has a master's degree from SUNY Oswego in human-computer interaction and has many years of experience as a UX designer with roles as creative director at Citibank and senior UX designer at Vanguard. She's also a coach, mentor to over 500 mentees, and a public speaker. Welcome, Tina.
Thank you so much. I'm super excited to be part of this podcast, as well as thanks for giving a really good introduction about me. That makes me not give my introduction again, so I appreciate that. But excited to be part of this podcast and share my experience, as well as share my knowledge about accessibility with you all.
Likewise. But before we jump into accessibility and all that, I like to hear about your unique story. So I read a little bit of tidbits here and there, but you grew up in India. You didn't go to an English medium school. I believe you went to a Gujarati medium school, and now you're in the US. You're pretty accomplished here. Take us through that journey, and tell us a little bit about the struggles and the challenges you had growing up.
Definitely. I think one of the biggest thing that happened, or very challenging thing that happened in my life, is coming out of my comfort zone, especially while growing up in India. My mother language, I studied in my mother language, which is Gujarati, as you said, and then doing my engineering. So I'm the first woman from my family who has done engineering as well as came to United States, and it's the biggest achievement in my family. And my biggest struggles, as I always speak about it very clearly, that English is not my first language. And while you're being in part of this country, I've been here for more than 6 years now, and communicating constantly in English can be a challenge. And especially it was challenge when I came for the first 3 months. I did not understood any single thing that people were speaking in front of me. And I used to work in dining hall where my managers are telling me to do something, and I would pause. I will ask them to give me instruction visually rather than speaking it. So I will ask them to act, and then they will do certain, I will follow what they are doing. So it was challenge at the beginning, and it's been 6 years now. And if you see me speaking at any event, you won't even come to know that I grew up in Gujarati medium, or it was the biggest challenge of my life in 6 years back. And it just constant practice. I think another thing that I would be super grateful about is I have found so many good people around me who are willing to help, share their experiences, pause, make me speak at my own pace, and try to interpret my broken English, and then rephrasing it, or try to repeat what I said, and then they will make sure they don't misunderstand me, and then try to understand it better. So I think my journey has been very exciting, but at the same time troublesome. But when I look back and think about it now, all of this is worth everything. I would encourage every woman to do it. I would encourage every individual to do certain things and challenge themselves, and never believe what others says. Believe in yourself, and try to do something which makes you feel more challenging and passionate about your dreams and career.
Yeah, it's amazing. You've only been in North America for 6 years. I would never have thought, to be honest. I thought you speak really well. Obviously, I can understand you perfectly.
I appreciate that.
I want to ask you a little bit about accessibility and education for girls in Gujarati. So you had mentioned in a post somewhere that because you were a girl, you weren't given a chance to learn English or go to an English medium school. Can you talk a little bit about that? And if that's changed, that, I mean, obviously that was a while ago. Has that changed now? India is clearly a pretty big superpower now, exporting, lots and lots of talent, everywhere.
Yeah, definitely. I think I'll be very honest. I never heard accessibility term in India. One of the very reason is like we are a country of such a huge population, and even accommodating normal human, like I'm using this word normal, which is like, again, it's not accessible, but like, that's how I have grown up with. Like we speak such language which is um sensitive, but at the
Mhm.
same time not appropriate. But like that's how you have grown up as a human. And I feel in India, this having the knowledge of accessibility or being accommodated for people with disability is actually a very huge topic where people don't feel comfortable talking about. And one of the things that I have seen in like United States and in different countries that I have been to, I think people here respect other people with disability compared to what we have in India. I have never seen a parking lot, and it's a basic example, right? I have never seen parking lots in India where we have specific places for accessible people
Mhm.
versus people without disability. Whereas over here, if you go anywhere, if you go to a supermarket, if you go to take a ride on bus, you will have a special seats for accessible people. And it's not very common. And coming to the question that you asked, like how it is in Gujarati, I don't think so people would talk about it. Like it's very big term. And um slowly and steadily I have seen changing in digital media and in digital application that we are considering accessibility. Like all the UX designers focuses on making the basic checklists proper, such as like explicit use of the language, making sure that the phone application or the website supports adjustable text, accessible form. But this is again very small amount of effort that we are doing because of the lack of knowledge. And slowly and steadily, more we practice and we vocalize about it, it keeps changing. But it will take a lot of amount of years.
Sure, sure. I mean, definitely, it's the awareness part is it's slow, and but it's growing, right? Like
Yeah.
even in North America, US, and Canada, where I live, it's I mean, it's been accessibility has been around. The regulations have been around for over 20 years, but we're now only seeing digital accessibility being a concern, and mainly because of compliance and regulation. So
Yeah.
uh, I wanted to ask you a little bit about, so you went to engineering school, and then you were, in IT, you were a developer, and then subsequently transitioned to a user research or UX designer. Can you tell us a little bit about that story? What made you change direction in your career?
Definitely. It's very interesting. So I always had a keen for design. I always had um, my natural instinct towards learning about user, talking to users and how they are like, experiencing certain things, with whether it's an application, whether it's an actual physical product or like anything in general. And another thing, when I read the Don Norman's book, but after I came to United States, and like, design of every day. And there were so many problems that I used to face as a day-to-day challenges, such as opening the door and like those no stories that the book has described. And I was like, it's all in my brain. This whole time I thought like it's all in my brain and I'm the weird user. But when I read that book, I really validated that it's not my problem. It's actual design problem. So when I was doing development, I realized that I love coding. I still do coding, but more than coding, I enjoy talking to my customers. I enjoyed solving those logical problems. I loved doing some design works and also creating the flows, which makes more sense as an experience rather than developing it and sitting behind the desk and nobody know what I'm doing and how am I doing. So one of the very big thing that I was thinking is I want to be close to technical, but also do not want to completely go away, but at the same time constantly focus on how can I humanize the experience. And that's when I came across this program called Human Computer Interaction. And I was like, this is something that I'm feeling aligns with my goals. It aligns with my next things that I want to do. And then when I studied, I understood like the psychology behind it. I understood what are the different things as a experienced designer you would be doing. And then the part of it is also visual design, accessibility and inclusivity. So I understood the importance of it. And then whole package is universal design. And now when I see myself, I feel very proud to take that transition because 5 years back, UX was very vague term. We are still defining what is UX, what is the role of product designer, and some people or some companies has more clarity compared to others, and like still this entire terms are not adopted so well. But I feel proud that I am doing it, and like because of LinkedIn or platform like Instagram or other social media, I think so people are spreading the awareness. There are so many designers out there and many conferences where people speak about experience design, and it's starting to get the awareness. And at the same time, I feel proud to be part of one of those designers so that I can share my experience and speak about it.
So one of the things that you mentor people are, on is, making that transition, right? Like if they don't have a lot of clarity and trying to make that transition over to a UX a researcher or a UX designer. Can you give us, or give us to those who are trying to make up their minds, what are some practical steps can they can do? Like, do they take a course? Do they just talk to other people? Give us some practical tips that has
I
worked for you and others.
Definitely. And based on my experience, I would definitely suggest people to do first understand are they passionate about it or not. I have seen like I have mentored more than 500 mentees so far, and I feel some people they're struggling on their current jobs or they're not sure about what they want to do and they think that design is easy. Some people are passionate about it and they transition to design because they are passionate about it, and I love people who are passionate about what they want to do. And one thing that I would say, like, hey, if you're passionate, go invest at time and money on it. I would never suggest anybody to do boot camp because you cannot be experienced designer in 6 months. Okay, let's be real. Those are scam. But if you find a really good boot go for it. Make sure that you have right amount of mentors, you have right amount of curriculum that gives you the holistic idea about what to expect to be as a designer, and learn about the human psychology, learn about the cognitive behavior, learn about what required for a success of a product, and then understand the user experience strategy. And then if you are interested in visual design, learn about visual design, but do not just do it for the sake of like doing it, because every topic that I spoke about, like cognitive behavior, or if I talk about color theory or visual design, it has its own deep meaning. Like even if I'm as a visual designer, if I'm designing any product, everything with respect to the color theory, typography, accessibility, inclusive design comes into the picture. So you cannot just be uh, good at designing, but you have to also understand what are the reasoning behind choosing those color, what are the reasoning behind choosing certain typography. If I am considering myself as an interaction designer or product designer, I really need to understand the human psychology behind it. What are the things, what are the good UX techniques versus the dark UX technique. There are certain times I have seen application where people try to make unethical UX and make sure that they earn business out of it. So you have to understand each and every aspect of design in a certain way where how it makes the life of user simple, and just do not do it for the sake of doing. So that's what my practice is. There are so many resources out there available. You can literally start with free applications or free resources, such as there are tons of designers who are freely available on YouTube. There are some very good LinkedIn writers who writes about UX designing. Then there are free mentors on ADP list or TopMate, where they provide free mentorships, workshops. You can attend conferences. So start with basic things, and then once you have made up your mind, invest either on 1 year or 2 years master program or bachelor program, depending upon where you are in your career and where you are in your life. But I would recommend, like, don't do 6 months boot camp and call yourself a designer. That's one recommendation for sure.
Okay, that's a good one. They're the boot camps, the UX designer boot camps are very, very popular.
Oh yeah.
Very, very popular. So I really like your advice on following people, designers in this case, or whoever you want to be on social media, whether it's YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram. Do you have anyone that you follow, really, any influencer or any designer that you follow on YouTube, anywhere, that you would recommend, or any books you would like, those who want to make that transition read, aside from the design of everyday things that you already mentioned?
Definitely. I think my one of the very good book that I read was Don't Make Me Think by Steve Krug.
Right.
Very simple read. It's very intuitive. You need to know any terms. You don't need to know about UX. It's simple human psychology. Even if I'm using this cup, like, don't make me think how to use this cup. Like, even if I'm using a phone or microwave, it's basic things. Like, because you when I think of a UX designing, I really don't think it as a web application or mobile application first. It's my day-to-day life experiences, right?
Right.
Like, you sit on a chair or you use microwave or you use fridge. It's basically your mind, whom you are training, because now you're so much into making sure everywhere you go, you start thinking about the experiences and how simply it makes you do certain things. So the Don't Make Me Think by Steve Krug really gives you that perspective about, like, how can you think of everything as a design element, and like how experiences, and make it simple. That's one very good book. If you really want to get more knowledgeable in terms of understanding different psychology, if you want to understand the reasoning behind accessibility or any resources which is freely available, I would say Smashing Magazine by Whiteley
Right.
Friedman is one of the very generous person and really good writer. He shares so much free information, and I've absolutely loved his work so far. So I would definitely recommend that. If you are like in the stage where you are looking for some information in terms of interview preparation, portfolio presentation, and all, there's one LinkedIn influencer Diana. I don't remember the last name, but I will definitely look it up and share after the podcast. So, Diana, I have taken so much inspiration from her while like doing the presentation. Most of my portfolio presentation is inspired by her, how to share certain knowledge, how to be good at storytelling. Because one of the very good aspect as a designer that you have to do is, like, you have to share your reasoning behind what you do and what your psychology behind doing certain things. So I think those are the three most top things that I prefer, and there are tons of them. Like, I don't think um I the list is endless for me, to be honest. But like, I prefer very basic information, and like, you just stick to it and try to believe and practice. That makes you like really perfect on doing certain things.
Oh, thank you for those recommendations. And yeah, I do follow the Smashing Magazine guy. His posts his content is excellent for sure.
Yeah.
Um, I want to ask you a little bit about your own process when it comes to designing. So you said a phrase earlier on. You used the term universal design, or and I think there's a lot of confusion around. It's a very general term. So let's get
Yeah.
into specifics. What is your UX design process, and talk a little bit about how you integrate accessibility into that process.
Definitely. So I'll give you two examples based on my experience before working for big firms like Citibank and Vanguard, and like once I started working for this company. So as a student, when I was like designing for the projects or like my internship work, I think the process was very rough in terms of like my understanding and like trying to figure out things. I would do the research. Basically, how things work is product requirements are given to you. You try to break down the requirements and understand each and everything that you have to do. Then you will start creating or understanding who is your demographic and divide those users. And then based on those users or personas, you will start creating user flows. Now, once you have the basic user flow, you will do a rough wireframing, and this is the point where you will be having the broad discussion with your product partners and the designers. Like, hey, this is what the direction I'm thinking to go. Is that okay? Do you think there are certain things that I need to consider? There are technical limitation or anything. So the product partners are very well knowledgeable in terms of like they know what their vision is. They'll guide you and they will give you the feedback based on that. Once you have a basic feedback, what you do is you create visual designs and then get user testing done. Once the user testing is done, you will get the results of what works best, what doesn't work best, and then based on that, you create perfect high fidelity prototypes, give the design specification to developers, share those user scenarios, make sure that you add error state, edge case, and everything. Now, when you're doing the visual design, that's when the accessibility comes into the picture. So what you do is like you make sure while the visual designs are done, at the stage of visual design, there are multiple components associated with it. So you have either design system, which is already created by making sure that all the accessible guidelines are met. There are certain times you don't have the design component. So what you do is you will be creating everything from scratch and make sure that the colors that you have picked is meeting the color contrast. The font style that you are taking has a proper adjustable text size or it is readable and legible. If you are using form, you make sure that the forms are accessible and basic things which is met. If you're using buttons or any clickable object in your design, you want to make sure that the visual focus are there. It has a different state, such as like for button, it has a focus state or press state, and different states are there when you're designing. So this is basic thing. And the last part is error scenario. So like you are making sure if you are giving or prompting any error during the action which has been wrong by the user, the prompts are right, it has the right colors associated with it, and also the language. So rather than saying, oh, error occurred, you would be specifying what is the reason why this error occurred. So that's the accessibility part that you will consider. So this is basic thing when you are designing and working. So this is what I used to follow when I was a designer, naive designer working
Mhm.
as a student. But now the process is a little bit different. I think one of the biggest thing that we focus is on research and discovering about every aspect, like who is our target audience, what are the things, what are the constraints that we are focusing on, who would we want to consider, and what are the user feedback. So we focus too much on user feedback, that how can we make sure that the life of the user is simplified, and we are focusing on the business aspect definitely, but the priority would be always user and making sure that the product is designed user friendly. So the couple of other direction that we think about is like how might we consider adding accessibility and inclusivity. So one of the very good example that I can give you is when we are designing for form. earlier, if you see, form designs are specifically targeted to the audience who has um, genders such as male and female, and adding one a couple of more genders such as non-binary or transgender or uh, others would be an appropriate way to make sure that you have inclusivity added to your forms. Maybe instead of just using name, you can also add preferred name, because most of the non-binary and transgender population do not feel comfortable using their given name, but they prefer certain different name because of their transition. So adding those things creates inclusivity, and that's how you make sure that you're not just thinking about one particular user, but you're trying to think about all the user. And that's when we call it as a universal design, because it's not just targeting me and you as a primary target audience, but it's also considering about all the other users and other use cases, and making sure that we make sure we target 99%, because it's how much ever we try, we are not ever going to solve for all the users, like, because there would be some limitation, there would be some learnings, because it's difficult to make sure everybody is added, but you try your best to make sure that, like, you're trying and improving and learning with the process. So that's the difference that I have seen. And again, so many other layers are associated. While we are doing visual design, we have our accessibility team. So Citibank as well as Vanguard, they have a big accessibility team, people who are working only on those domains to make sure that whenever we change any designs or anything that happens, we have to go to the accessibility team, make sure that we get everything reviewed from them before even it gets to the developer. And when the developers are working, we are involved in making sure that they're using certain tags as well as certain areas of accessibility code into the designs while creating those designs, and that is been tested before it gets live. So there's a couple of other layers which is added for accessibility, as well as inclusivity is more about language and like how we strategize things, but accessibility is more about coding and adding certain tags to your designs as well as development. So they do it, and before it gets to the production, because of multiple layer, again, it's a legal regulation that is
Right.
also that they have to follow, and they have to make sure that there's no sue cases or anything, but mainly it's a primary focus and mission of the company that we want to make sure that not the user should be able to do what they want to do despite of their challenges.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for the explanation of the process. It's in big companies, I think big companies have an advantage where they may have, not all companies, but a lot of them do have an accessibility team. Can you talk about, and smaller companies don't, obviously, it's just the UX designer and they have to take on all the accessibility, all the responsibilities as well. All the developer has to take on all the responsibility of the accessibility team. Can you talk about, in your experience with a bigger company, what does the accessibility team does versus the actual like product development team? And in terms of accessibility, how closely do they work? Or are they just like a gatekeeper? That's yeah.
With big firms, like, so I've worked for two firms so far, and I think they do more than gatekeeping. It's education that they have to make sure that they educate each and every individual, and accessibility just does not come for design or product development, right? It's also making sure that within the organization, everybody feels and understand those languages. They respect one another in terms of like challenges that ones are going. So one thing is the design or development aspect of it, but the other is more education and awareness part of it. And how can we make sure that the everybody is aware about everything? Then additional thing, the way one your product expertise, right? So when we are creating PDFs or when we are creating digital signages or anything which has print, so digital media involved, which is not application or mobile application, where we need to make sure that we follow certain accessible guidelines. So like even if I'm creating PDF, I don't know how to make that PDF accessible. So I need to take guidance from my accessibility team, like how can I do that? What are the best practices to do it? Or if even if I'm creating a poster for my digital signage, what are the things I can do to make sure that the users are able to see or read and listen to it without being having the difficulty. So for those things also, the accessibility teams are the team where we reach out. I worked on a very small project called Skeleton Loader, and as a designer, I know like what to do and what to expect, but I might miss the amount of time I should keep the skeleton loader on the screen, because it also creates seizures for the people who has a motion sickness or vertigo. So to ensure that such design implementation does not go live without testing or without having the right knowledge. So going and consulting our accessibility team with the developer, where they give us the guidance like, hey, this is the amount of time you should be able to play that, otherwise it will create certain effects to our users with certain disability. So those guidelines is also one of the reason we have an accessibility team that at that point they act as a gatekeeper. So they play multiple roles, multiple heads, and there are developers who is only working on creating tags and codes specifically for accessible guidelines. So those are the different reasons why they are there. And mm, I have never like worked very closely with them, but it's for me, it's more of I work as a strategy. So my work is more close to the designer, and designers does the necessary
Right.
guideline checkups for the guidelines.
Right. You mentioned, a little the accessibility team recommending trainings and tools and all that. What is your tool set look like for designing? Are you like just a Figma? I know you use a lot. I mean, most designers use Figma. Talk a little bit about, like, do you have any special tools that you use for accessibility, or anything else that helps you become a better designer?
Definitely. So as you said, Figma does most of the job, and there's one plugin called Spark. That's what I use most of the time
Okay.
to make sure that every guidelines are met. But the outside, once everything is live, there's something called as a Big Hack 2.0
Yeah.
tool. Again, it's a plugin. So I use those plugins. There is something called as a Wave plugin.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Extension for Chrome. So I use those plugins into my machine so that I can check the accessibility behaviors. There's a couple of them for color contrast, so I can check those color contrasts for the website which is live, to make sure that even if we might have missed in design, so part of it can be captured in design, part of it which we cannot handle in since it's not a part of design, is more of a development accessibility. So when the website is live, we make sure that we have those tools enabled and check it, and if we flag something, we report it to our team. So basically I use this specific tools to identify accessibility problems.
Great. Yeah, those are all great tools. Stark and Wave and any other like checker that you can put into your Chrome
Yep.
browser. Follow-up question on testing. So you have all the automated testing stuff. Can you talk a bit about how you test, especially with people with disabilities, or and yeah, what does your testing process look like?
So I'll be very honest. I do check a couple of things. One is whether the website is responsive and adjustable or not, which is very common. We miss sometime creating responsive designs, or we miss creating mobile first experience. So I always focus on that. The second thing that I focus is on color contrast. most of the time we know only specific things, such as like, the gray button or the gray color does not look good, or it's not readable. So we specifically focus on a couple of things, but we forget about many other visual impairments. And I try to make sure that I check color contrast for all the different visual impairments that is associated. Then I focus on adjustable text. I I like to keep my screens in a very low font size, because that's how I feel comfortable reading. But I know
Right.
my couple of other friends who likes to read everything in a very zoom or bold
Right.
fonts. So I check that, because that's one of the things which is very common. We forget it. When we are designing, we create those designs, but we forget to make it the spacing. We forget the how it will look. So having that adjustable text size is super important. I also focus on explicit language. So I come from a bilingual background, and I know, being part of America, there are two main language people speak. It's English and Spanish, which is very common. So if your design, when it's developed, it's not bilingual, it's a problem, because you need to make sure that the translations are good, and it is not creating any fuss, because like sometimes Google translation cannot properly translate what
Right.
you're trying to communicate with your customer. So having the explicit language or bilingual is important in any development. And then sometimes I do try to do screen reading. I'm not a very tech savvy when it comes to accessibility testing, because I have never done any certification as such for accessibility, or I primarily do not focus on accessibility as a part of my job. But it's basic testing that I do as a designer, and make sure that like the rest of the things are being tested by my UI designer, and they take care of everything that is required.
Okay. Um, color contrast is so important. I totally agree with you. What tools or things how do you check for color contrast? Can I
I
give us
have a
some
color
specifics?
contrast checkers, and DQ has a very good plugin for
Okay.
color contrast.
Okay.
So that's the tool I use for checking those color
Okay.
contrast skills.
Okay. Very, very cool. Just a quick plug for Venngage.
Yeah.
Venngage actually has a built-in color contrast checker in the color picker itself. So as
Oh,
you're picking the color, it'll tell you the contrast foreground and background automatically. So
okay.
yeah, sorry about that. All
Next,
right. I
next
think
time, remember.
I wanna sort of and sort of this interview with something that I think something that I read recently on your LinkedIn. You had a post about your journey and how you were able to buy a house for your mom. So and so tell us about that. Like, what how did that feel, and how, and all that. Yeah.
Definitely. First of all, I'm really, really grateful for you to read everything that is there on my LinkedIn profile and even remembering it. Yes, I did buy a house. It's been 2 years now, and I cleared off all the loan for it, and it feels good. Not to just clear the loan, but to take my mom after doing the entire interior design, and as a South Asian kid, I know it was a big struggle to come to United States, and then like, it's fulfilling all the dreams that you had as a kid, and then seeing that. So when she walked to the house for the first time, she was like, "Is that my house?" Like she was not able to believe, like, how did I make that money? How, like, she asked me a couple of questions, like, did you really stole somebody, or
No,
like
no, yeah,
rob
yeah.
the bank, or so it's funny, but like she was not able to believe for
So it was a surprise. You didn't
yeah,
tell
she
her you
didn't
were gonna
know.
buy her. You didn't
No,
tell her
she
you were gonna
didn't
buy
know.
her house. Oh
Yeah.
wow. Okay.
Yeah, once the interior was done, I told her, let's go to, I want to go take you somewhere. And then she saw the house, and she
Oh
was
wow. Okay.
literally surprised. And that feeling just makes you feel like you have accomplished a lot in your life, because um, as I said, like South Asian, coming from a South Asian family, doing things for your parents is very important. And like taking care of them, or like,
Right.
giving the back to them after a certain age, it feels accomplishment is on its own. And everything that you do is worth enough. Like, even sacrificing and living in the United States by yourself is like worth living, because you see them happy and you just feel proud about it.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think a lot of us, not from South Asia, would also agree that, yeah, it's, being able to provide for your family is and give back it's a great accomplishment for sure. Thank you for sharing that story.
Definitely.
Yeah, so we're about to wrap up. I think, if someone wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way? Is it through LinkedIn?
Yes, I think LinkedIn is the best
Right.
platform for me to connect with people, as well as like they can reach out to me. I think I get so many messages. Sometimes it's hard to reply, but LinkedIn is my go-to platform. Like, I'm always on it, making sure I try my best to connect and share as much as I can.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So if you're listening, follow Tina Gada on LinkedIn. Otherwise, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much once again for like having me on your podcast, as well as like talking and listening to my entire story as well as experiences.
No, thank you.